Hello my friends, my name is Irvin, also known as Koboman. This is a getting started with Azure video, which is a combination of two videos that I previously made on Microsoft Azure as part of introduction to this Microsoft system. First part of this video talks about basic navigation on the Azure platform. Introduction talks about what Azure is, what it's used for, and then getting started with virtual machines as a starting point. Towards the end and second part of this video talks about storage containers and creating shared drives, which are then applied to the machines. Microsoft Azure is a web-based or a cloud-based platform, if you will, that allows you to deploy different type of applications using Microsoft's service or Microsoft's processing power. So just imagine a bunch of different locations all around the world that have server rooms inside of them. All of those servers you are able to access through the Microsoft Azure and set up or deploy any application that you may even think of. And I'll show you there are so many options that you can use. There are so many different things that you can go through, and I will show you step by step on how to do this, whether it's deploying certain applications or running different services. I will show you from the beginning to the end for each video, so that way there is no confusion. Friends, if you like this type of content, please take 1 second to click the like button. I really appreciate it. It makes a huge difference for me. Alright, so before you can get started, you have to create an Azure account and have a Microsoft account. But before you can activate your Azure account or have full access to it, you need to provide identity verification, and they want or require a credit card for you to use to verify your identity. Alright, so let's go ahead and have a quick look at how it looks like. This is me logged in into Microsoft Azure, and there are a couple of things that you notice first. This is the home page, and typically in the home page what you see is different applications or things you've installed recently, and that would be under recent resources. Above here you have Azure Services, and from here you simply select a service that you want to deploy. And don't worry, I'm not going to confuse you with any of this, but I just kind of want to show you what's there available. And I'm going to click on more services as I did over there, just to show you that there is a massive amount of different things you can learn. Here are some examples. Here are the categories. There are general, there are networking, storage, web, there's analytics, there is even AI machine learning, there is mixed reality, security monitoring, all kinds of different things you can learn. So if I expand this even further to see all services, you can see that there is just a massive amount of different things you can learn. However, that being said, in the first two videos we're going to concentrate on creating some virtual machines that I will show you how to access, how to monitor, and how to configure. And after that, the second video will be about file storage and storage containers and how you can install them and run them using scripts through the PowerShell. All right. I hope you're still with me, because I promise it's not going to be confusing or super complex or anything like that. This is just a brief introduction to Microsoft Azure of the things that I will be looking to show you. Alright, so now that we're done with the brief introduction, we're going to start from scratch. So in order to start from scratch, we have to start with a resource group. So what the resource group is, and here you can see it right here, resource group is, you can think of it as a container that will have all the services, all the applications that you run in that one spot. So it's a form of, it's a way to organize everything in one place in order for things to function, and of course things to be built properly, because these are web services that you pay for typically, and if you want to especially keep them running, you're going to have to pay to Microsoft to run all these services. For example, let's say you want to install a web server and you want to deploy virtual machines and run Apache on it, you're going to have to, they want to know, they need to have a way to kind of keep track all of that. So that's what the resource group is. I'm going to click on that, and we're going to create a new one. You can see there are 3 different ones that I've created here, but let's go ahead and create one from scratch. Again, this is just basically, think of like creating a package of some sort, and for the package you need that outside shell or outside box. So right now we're creating the box for our services that we're going to run. So this is going to be outside of it. No labels on it yet or anything like that, but we're going to start creating that right now. The first thing that asks here is a subscription. And again, that kind of ties into what thing I was saying about them, charging you. In my case, I'm using the Azure subscription 1. So this is just a way of a subscription, if you will, just like a Netflix subscription. You would just kind of pick the subscription that you have currently right now. And this is the free one that I'm using right now. There are $200 in credits available for it, so I'm going to click that, so that way, that's simply it is. You just kind of tell it, I want to use this subscription, and anything that's inside of this resource group is going to be charged under that subscription. This is incredibly important to know, so that way you know what you're getting into and where the charges are coming from as well. All right, and then we're going to name this new resource group. So we're going to name it something that is appropriate for this tutorial, and we're going to just name it Azure Tutorial. We're going to name it that. Next thing is resource details. This is also incredibly important. You want to make sure that everything that you deploy is in the same region. And you can see if you expand this that there are so many different regions. You got East, US, US East I should say, and then Europe North, US Central, Africa, Asia, Canada, and a bunch of different ones. I'm going to stick to US Central. So everything that I create in this has to be in the same region. Think about networking in a sense, especially when you're trying to sync different services with one another. You want them to be in the same region, otherwise they may not work properly. Okay, now just keep that in mind. I'm going to click review and create, and after that I'm just going to click create. So here is our box, guys. This is the box that we've created, and now we're going to add more things to that box. And the first thing we're going to do is create a virtual machine. The reason I wanted to start with virtual machines is because most people are familiar with that, especially if you're a system administrator of sort, and it's kind of simple to configure and install, and most people understand what that is because it's most of the time it's just a operating system that you are familiar with. All right, now the way I'm going to add a virtual machine, I'm going to click on this little hamburger icon here so I can have an expanded menu, and from here we can also select different services, not just from home. This is where we were at initially, but you can also select some of the from the left hand side. This is what I like to use for quick access. So I'm going to go down and simply just select virtual machine. I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to click on here to create a virtual machine. And then we're going to create, I'd say, about 3 different ones just to show you. So we're going to, here we are in a familiar window that we've seen earlier. Again, we have to make sure that we have the proper subscription selected. This is again, this is how they're going to charge us for this service. And again, we have resource group. And remember the one we created here, we can just simply select that. We're going to select our Azure Tutorial. This is our group, and then we're going to name our virtual machine. So let's see, what's the most common operating system that people are using right now? And that would be Windows, right? So let's go ahead and type in Windows 10 VM. We're going to create one of those, and luckily our region is automatically populated, so we just have to make sure it is that, and it is indeed Central US, so it does memorize that, which is really good. And then I'm not going to talk about infrastructure redundancy. I'm just going to leave it like that. It's just a virtual machine. And then here for the image, by the way, you can use your own image if you'd like. It says here browse all public and private images. That's just a bunch of different things that they have available, but from my understanding you can use your own image as well, but we're just going to use what they have here pre-built for now. And then we're going to select Windows 10, and we're going to go with Windows 10 Pro version 1809, which is a little bit behind. The current version is 1909, I believe, but that doesn't matter. We can certainly update that later if needed, but for now we want to we're just going to select that. And here it is, our size. What that means, what it is just the type of CPU and RAM and system resources we want to use for this virtual machine. And here it gives you an idea of what 2 virtual CPUs cost with 7 gigabytes of memory, and it's $183 a month. So we're going to click change, and we're going to select a different option that's going to be more affordable. In the change window, we have all kinds of different options, and as soon as the loads here it is in costs a month, we can select something that's a bit more affordable. And for that, I'm going to just click this first one, which is just 2 gigs of RAM, 1 virtual CPU, and that's going to be good enough for our testing purposes. Of course, testing purposes only. And I do, again, I have that $200 credit, but I'm just going to show this in case there's some confusion about billing or whatnot. Anyways, so I'm going to choose one, and you see how it says $47 a month. This is estimated usage. A lot of times, and I'm not 100% sure if the case is with Azure, but I use Google services for Google Cloud services for my website. They will a lot of times give you different discounts. So, I'm not sure if that's 100% the case with Azure, but I suspect it is. It is just depending on what kind of a thing you're using their services for. And of course, you can use the cheap one, which is here $8 a month, but this is incredibly slow, so I wouldn't even worry about that too much. If you look at it closely, it gives you kind of a limits and how much storage you have. You can certainly look at those things on your own, and it's going to be dependent on your personal preferences or what kind of a system that you need. But I'm just going to use it, this general purpose one. I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to click select. All right. Now we have our virtual machine set up. This is going to be our settings for it. So the next thing we have is creating an administrator account so that we can log into it. And we're going to log into it using remote desktop. This is pretty cool that they have it set up. So I'm going to type in Kobuman, and I'm going to type in my password. They really want a super long password, which is perfectly okay. So I'm going to type it in twice. All right. And here are the inbound rules. Select which virtual machine network ports are accessible from the public internet. You can specify more limit or gradual network access to the network tab. So I'm going to leave it at RDP, so that way we can use RDP. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And then here it says save money, already have Windows Enterprise. So they're asking you about the license, whether you have a license or not. This is something, if you're seriously going to run this, you can look into later, but for now it's just going to let us install it. So I'm just going to click review and create, and as soon as it approves the deployment, we're going to click create deployment, and after that we're going to create a couple of more virtual machines. So here's our overview of the things we've selected. By clicking create, you basically agree to the terms of service, this and that, blah 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 blah. If you're interested in more details for that, you can certainly take a look for yourself. Again, we're just kind of trying to keep this as simple as possible, and then depending on what we want to do with this, we can kind of look at the more details later. Okay. Now, once we create this, as you can see, it's initializing deployment. It's going to start deploying it. What happens, it actually creates a virtual network automatically for you, and it places this machine into a virtual network for you, for your container that we kind of talked about. So now, kind of going back, that resource container that we created is that box that we have. Now we're starting to put things inside of this box. So everything that's inside of this box is the network that everything's going to be on. And again, we kind of made sure that we picked US Central in our case. So everything that we put in there is going to be inside of that one box, and everything's going to be connected and attached to itself. All right. So the deployment is underway. So we can actually get out of this window and proceed to create a couple of more virtual machines. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to create a virtual machine server. So I'm going to create a new one, going to click on there, and you can see it's processing over here, and that's perfectly fine. We already told it, go ahead and do this, and it already has its settings, and it's just doing its thing in the background. We're going to do the same thing for let's see here. We're going to just pick a server. We're going to I think I want to do 2019. So again, we're going to do a resource group. We're going to select Azure tutorial, and I'm going to name it Windows Serve 2019 VM. Make sure it's US Central, and I'm going to select Windows Server 2019 Data Center. I'm going to go back here and change to our standard if available. We're going to standard type of CPU processing. It's this one. That's the first one. I'm going to select that. And again, if you're creating a server and you needed to do a certain amount of processing, you can certainly change this at any time, even after you deploy it. So you can stop the service and later on change these settings on any of these virtual machines. I'm going to create our administrator password and login. Just a moment here. I'm trying to remember. There are thousands of passwords that I have for a bunch of different things. Trying to get a unique password for everything is a bit difficult. So again, we're going to leave the RDP open so that way we can access it. And I'm going to click review and create. And yes, you can go into more detail and specify the type of things you want on it. What does it say? It errored out. Required information is missing. What did we miss? Basics. Oh, I made it too long. The name of the virtual machine. All right. Anyways, we're going to click review and create. So yeah, you can go in there and specify the disk sizes and which network you want to use. But again, this is going to automatically put it into the network that you need to. But if you want to go in and specify disks, you can go in there and specify type of disk you want. If you want the premium, you can certainly do so. You can add, attach a disk on it. This is all virtually, you can virtually do this in any type of virtual machine that you set up. And then if you go to networking, you can specify the network, but again, it's automatically going to put you into the correct network, so I'm not too worried about that. And there are some other things you can check and adjust, but again, I want to keep this very simple so that anybody can get this going on their own. All right, so review and create. Now it should let us it should approve the deployment of it once it thinks about it a little bit here, and then we're going to click create, excuse me, and then we're going to deploy this machine as well. It may take a little time. These are not the fastest when it comes to creating virtual machine, but it is pretty, I should say, it's pretty common to have this type of thing happening whenever you're using Google. I say Google because I use Google quite often, but when you use cloud services of this sort. But I digress. It is pretty fast, considering that it installs an operating system on a virtual machine. Okay, let's see what our process or what our status is. It's still deploying the first one. Let's see here. You can see right here that once I clicked on the little bell that I have $197 in credit remaining. I'm just going to leave it here in this window for a minute, and you can see here what it's kind of doing when it's deploying. It's creating that, the virtual machines, and then it's reserving an IP address for it as well, and it's kind of telling you that it is putting it in the correct network. All right, let me see here. You know what? Let's go ahead and do another virtual machine, but this time we're going to do a Linux machine, and yeah, the first one is still creating. While we do that, I'm going to execute the other one. Execute the deployment of our third virtual machine, which is going to be a Linux. So here we are again, resource group. We're going to make sure we check Azure tutorials, and I'm going to type in Linux for the name of this virtual machine. And I'm going to actually label it Ubuntu because I'm going to select Ubuntu. Region is US Central again. And then I'm just going to leave it here on Ubuntu server 1804. And again, you have different options for different types of Linuxes. And I'm going to go back here and select our standard type of machine for Linux. And I certainly don't want to use the slowest one. And yep, that's the one. I'm going to select that. And when it comes to Ubuntu or Linux, there are a couple of different ways you can access it. You can use SSH public key. So this is kind of confusing, and this is another topic that we would have to talk about and explain. But it's just a different way of encryption access that you can use, and then use a key to access it. But that's confusing. I don't want to talk about that. I'm just going to keep it to simple username and password, just like we have on the other one, just to keep it simple. And the reason I'm doing this, guys, is because I have people who are new to computers that watch my content. I can talk about SSH public keys and this and that, but let's keep it simple, guys. I'm just going to keep it simple. So here we can change it, different sendings for the inbound ports. By the way, if you are going to run a web server here, you can select to have it open for those as well here. This will allow all IP addresses to access your virtual machine. Now, if you're going to use this type of setup, you don't have to if you don't want to. Typically, you would just leave the SSH because you don't want to keep yourself, open yourself up for the intrusion. Once you set up a web server, you'll have a way to access it through the web server interface. So you don't necessarily have to have these HTTPS open at this time at all. So you can leave just SSH because that's typically how you would access a Linux server because it's a command line anyways. So I would just kind of leave it at SSH and for that. Once you deploy a web server, for example, you can block access to SSH externally. There are different ways of doing it. You can use it you can use configuration on the server itself to block access to SSH ports. But again, we're going to just kind of leave it at that for now. I'm going to click review and create, and then once it approves our deployment, we're going to click create. So keep it moving. Otherwise, this video would have been God knows how long if I kept talking about every detail of things, and it would be confusing as well. Okay, let's see. I'm just waiting for this window to go to the next window to kind of confirm to me that it's submitted for deployment. And hopefully our Windows 10, the first virtual machine, is deployed already. Now I'm just kind of checking to see if everything is going right. Okay, good. Your deployment is underway. All right, so I'm going to go back home. I'm going to click on home. You can go back to home and see the things that we've touched on recently. And it takes a while to update, actually, right here. It takes a bit to update, but this is what would show up typically of the new things that we've touched on or created or adjusted. And it also does that in the dashboard. If we go to the dashboard, okay, good. We got a message here that deployment succeeded for one of our virtual machines. We're going to check that here in a minute, but you know what? Let's pin it to dashboard because I wanted to go to dashboard anyways. That was my next. I'm going to pin it to dashboard, so let's see what that is. So next thing under home here is dashboard. So we're going to click on dashboard to see what's there. All right. Looks like our Windows server is deployed. Oh, where's our Windows 10? That's kind of weird. Didn't we have Windows 10 machine deployed as well? Did that succeed or not? All right. Well, let's go to resources. I'm going to click on go to resources. Windows Server 2019. Huh. This already deployed, but not the Windows 10 that I asked for. Okay. Well, let's go to our virtual machines again and see if it's there. Oh, it's still creating it. That's interesting. So Windows Server 2019 actually deployed faster than Windows 10. It's still creating it. Huh, that's very interesting. Anyways, let's go ahead and see the overview of Windows Server 2019. So again, we are on virtual machines, and this will show you all the other ones that we created as well. So we're missing a Linux here, which is still being created, and it takes a while to refresh to see. So we're going to click on Windows Server because supposedly that one is already deployed. We can see our public IP address of it, and we can here connect to it. But I kind of wanted to show you overview of it in the sense to see what is there for you to actually look at, besides just regular information that is there. I mean, yeah, sure, you can see the IP address on it, you can see the subscription ID, computer name if available, but and then type of CPU that you're running and this and that. And you should be able to change this once you click stop, and that's a topic for another video. But right now I wanted to show you what is kind of important as an Azure administrator, and that is monitoring. Now you can see that there are four different graphs here, and that are kind of the reason there are four and these specific ones because these are kind of the most important ones that you would want to look at. First one is being CPU average. This is the usage of your CPU, and the next one is network usage, disk bytes, which involves read and write bytes at any given time. You can see it gives you how much on the left column here, and on the bottom it tells you the time of it, and also it gives you disk read and disk write in bytes. And then on the other one here, over here next to it, it says disk operations per second on average, and it gives you different times. The reason this is important to have is that if you suspect something suspicious going on, for example, let's say you're running a website or a web server, or you suspect attack on your server, you can look at the different times and different CPU usage, different operations on it that are happening at certain times. And this doesn't give us a good example here because it's a brand new one, but let's go ahead and connect to it, and we're going to do some stuff on it, so that way it's going to give us some data here which we can get back to, and I can kind of talk about it a little bit more, because right now it doesn't really give us enough for me to talk about. So let's go ahead and click connect here, and we're going to select RDP. Alright, so what this does, it's going to download an RDP file for us that we can just simply click and use it, just a regular Windows remote desktop protocol. So we're going to click on that, and it's going to save it. I'm just checking. Okay, you don't see the pop-up, but there's actually a pop-up that says do you want to save this file or just open it. I'm going to click open it. I'm going to click connect. I apologize, you guys don't see the login on this recording, but it is there. So what I'm doing is just typing in the password and the login that I showed you before, that I've set up upon the creation of this, and I'm going to click OK. I will show you the whatchamacallit, the remote desktop as well as soon as I get it going here. Okay, just a moment, please bear with me. I just need to add a different source, window capture. Need to capture that window, just a moment. Please bear with me. Here we go, remote desktop. Here we are. Alright, there you guys, there you go. I hope you can see it. It's loading right now. So I'm going to, let's see here. Hope it doesn't break the stupid recording window software is not being good to me. Alright, looks like it's showing the RDP there, and it's creating it. The typical thing, the first time you log in, it's going to create your local profile, and it's going to take a bit to load. It's, this is very typical. You just kind of have to wait for it to start and get going, and here it is finally coming up. So this is our Windows Server machine. Pretty soon we're going to see that Windows Server setup configuration there, and then it's just like using a regular Windows Server machine. As if you were there. You guys know what remote desktop is, but then again, this goes to show you that you have full access to it. Okay, now I'm going to go back to that overview and kind of look at those graphs with you and tell you kind of for the things to kind of look for when it comes to monitoring this type of a system. And then I'm going to show you the other machines as well, depending how long this takes. And see, here it is. Here's that typical thing where it asks you to, do you want to allow this PC to be discoverable? And we're going to click yes for that. So there you go. This is typically what happens or what you see when you install Windows Server. And I'm just going to minimize this and go back to our Azure window. Okay, there we are. Okay, so we're going to click on Overview again, just so you can see all the things that are happening on the window on the Windows 2019 server. So since we've logged into it, we saw more activity. Now we can see that at this time, which is at 12:13 p.m., we can see that there is more CPU activity. As a matter of fact, they spiked to almost 100%. And at the same time, you can see that it kind of moves the other diagrams or graphs at the same time, so that way you can see what is going on at the same time. So it kind of aligns it for you. And now you can see there is more read and write, which is pretty normal. It gives you the disk reads down here where it says 137 megabytes, and then disk writes are 483 megabytes. So this is happening as we are creating our local profile. And at the same time, we see some network activity, and that is, it says Windows Server is network in total is 147 megabytes, and network out total is let's see, it's still happening. It's at 1.27 megabytes. So it downloaded 147 megabytes of data and it uploaded 1 megabyte, 1.27 megabytes. And then we get more disk operations. So why is this important? Why am I telling you about this? If you suspect somebody hacking into your system, you might want to kind of look at the spikes in the graph. Otherwise, you'll be just normal or just a little jagged like this. Normally, this is pretty normal operation, just kind of idling. But when it comes to huge spikes like this, you want to kind of look at this and see what is happening. Now, if it's just a web server and you see increase in traffic, people using your website, and you see a spike like this, but then you look at your other monitoring tools for the live traffic of people coming through and you see a spike on your server, that's normal, right? But if you suddenly see a spike at a certain time, then you might want to see if there is some kind of a attack on your server or whatnot, or if there's some kind of a, who knows, maybe even a virus happening on your computer if you have abnormal disk reads, bytes, or CPU usage. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is look at other things that are here under the overview. There are a bunch of different things here that we can look at that help you deal with this type of stuff, and things that you can change. So if you click, for example, on networking here under settings, you can look at the network settings of it and gives you more information on it. You can add inbound port rules if you want to open up different ports or not. You can, at the same time, you can disable one. So here's our RDP here, and we can disable it if we want. So if you're occasionally accessing this Windows server using the RDP, you might want to delete it, so that way you're more protected. Nobody can really try to access it afterwards. And then same thing when it comes to disks. If you click on disks here, you can make changes to it if you'd like. A lot of times we have to stop the service from running. I'm not exactly sure if that's the case here with the Azure systems. We can certainly try that. And then we got a bunch of different monitoring things that we can look at. So one of the things that I showed you there are those graphs, and there is a different way to look at that as well if you want a more customized and cleaner way of doing it. If you click on the little hamburger thing, sign, you can go down here and select monitor, and you can look at monitoring metrics of it. So if you click here, explore metrics, you can add different graphs that you can look at. Again, I don't want to confuse you too much with this. Again, this is just another way of looking at the same thing, except in a more detailed manner where you can make adjustments and change the different metrics that you want to look at. And here's just a real quick, if we click here on the scope, this allows you to select our resource. So if we select our Azure subscription 1, we know this is where our resource group is at. And then we can click Azure tutorial, and then we're going to look down here for our server, and for some reason it's not scrolling down, but that's okay, no problem. We know that we have that service. I'm going to click on resource type. I'm going to uncheck select all. I'm going to just click virtual machines because that's the only thing I want to look at for now. And I'm going to close that, and now it's going to come up and say, well, you have 3 virtual machines. Which ones do you want to monitor? I'm going to click Windows Server 2019. I'm going to select that, and now it's asking me to select a metric. So we can kind of replicate to what we've seen previously. We can kind of select, I don't know, let's see, disk read operations per second. We had that over there, and then the graph is going to come up and show us. You can see here, there's that. Then we can add more to it, or we can add another metric, and in a way where you can just select, what was the other one, network out total. Let's see, where's our network in total, I should say. And there was an out as well, and it gives you that. And they give you kind of side by side, but if you want them to kind of stack on top of each other, you can certainly do that as well. I'm just going to move it to the right here to move the timeline. But again, there's not much going on right now, so there really isn't much to look at. And let me just try it one more here. CPU, I want to look for the CPU one. Percentage CPU, here we go. Average, okay. And it gives you, see, it's just not enough for us to kind of visualize. Anyways, the machine is just too new for us to actually, for this to work properly, because it hasn't even replicated completely. We know there's a lot more going on. It's just that it takes time, and these things kind of take time to replicate for you to use this properly. But anyways, it's all here. It's just a different way of looking at it. And if you want to get in more, in-depth analysis of what's going on with the usage of that machine, you can certainly do that. All right, let's go to our other virtual machines. We can look at Windows 10, but it's kind of the same thing. Yeah, I went ahead and stopped it early. I don't know if you guys seen that, but I went ahead and stopped it from working, but it's because the way I access it is the same as Windows Server 2019. I just wanted to show you that you can deploy that. Let's go ahead and click our Linux Ubuntu machine. The way you can connect to this is if you click on the connect, you can use SSH, you can use RDP, but if we click on RDP, you can see that we have to install certain things on our computer in order to access this. This is not going to actually work. So if I click download RDP, it's not going to actually let me work to it. Typically you would, and it's closed. We know that the port is closed anyways. So we can choose to connect with SSH with the key thing, this and that, but I don't want to do that. There's an easiest way to connect to this, and if you scroll down under this all the way down, there is a thing called Serial Console. So if we click on that, it will give us the same access as if it was SSH, I believe. Now, it's going to ask us for our password, so we can actually have access to our console. But once we go in there, it's just the easier way to accessing it. As soon as it comes up here, it's going to ask us for our password, and we're going to be able to, browse it. Just that, once you, the only difference is that it's not a pop-out window, and for me it actually works out for me to show you like this. And okay, log in. I'm going to type in my login name, and I'm going to type in my password. I'm going to hit enter, and as soon as it thinks about it, we will have access, and there it is. We have full access to this server. So if we do, for example, ls-a, it's going to show us what's inside of these different folders, and we can make adjustments, update it, do all kinds of different things. We can create more monitoring. We can install different get app system analysis monitoring things that we can do. Okay. Anyways, this is how you can access the Linux server and just kind of go through it and look at different things. This is a continuation of Microsoft Azure platform. We're going to be learning new things today. In the previous video, I've talked about on how to create different virtual machines on the Microsoft Azure platform, how to create them, how to configure them, and how to monitor them for different issues. Amongst other things that I've talked about in the video, it's really good idea to actually look at that and watch that first video in order to get a really good introduction of what Microsoft Azure is. As promised in that video, I'm going to continue with the second video that will be about storage accounts, and we're going to create file shares inside of that storage accounts, and then we're going to add those file shares into our virtual machines, which are going to appear as shared drives. So if you do tech support, you're familiar with shared drives, which is something that you would add to the user's computer in order for them to access it for storage. So again, I highly recommend that you watch the previous video as the introduction so that way you can follow along. Of course, I will have a pop-up link right here on the right hand side that you can simply follow, and at the end of this video. Alright guys, that being said, please take 1 second to like my video. That really makes a huge difference for me. Thank you so much. I appreciate your support on this. Alright guys, let's get into it. And here we are in our home page of Microsoft Azure. From here we can click storage accounts, but another way to find storage account is to click on the little hamburger icon and just go down and select storage accounts. So let's go ahead and click storage accounts, and we're going to create one. You already can see that I already have one, and that's related to the fact that you gotta have one in order to store your virtual machines or anything else that you create that requires taking up space or storage, right? So of course we're going to have a storage account already. But for this, we're going to create a special one just for file storage. So from here, we're going to click Add, and then we're going to create one. And the reason we're creating one is related to billing mostly. So Microsoft wants to know, what are you using things for? Just like we created different resource groups for our virtual machines, Microsoft wants us to create a separate group for the storage accounts. So it's kind of related to billing, so that way they know what that is used for, so that way they can bill you for it. Kind of similar to what we had in our virtual machines, the first thing that comes up is to select our subscription. And again, subscription is basically the subscription that we're using for the Microsoft Azure platform, a way to bill you basically, just like you have, for example, Netflix subscription or anything else. So you tell it, okay, I want to use this one. In our case, it's already selected. And then here we're going to select a resource group. As I mentioned in the previous video, every time you create a resource group, which is what we've done in the previous video, you want to make sure that everything else that you want it to be connected to that, you want to make sure you select the same one. And in the previous video, we created a group called Azure Tutorial. So we're going to select that. And just to kind of quickly overview why we're doing this, when you make sure that you're selecting the same resource group, you also make sure at the same time that you're putting everything on the same network. So with this way, it's going to make sure that that the network connections between all those virtual machines and the storage is also working, in the sense that they are on the same network. It's going to reduce the fact that you may need to configure different security settings, this and that. It kind of puts it in the same network. You will have connections to it, and that way you are good to go, especially when you create later on a sync storage, which basically what it does, it creates a backup of the storage that you're creating. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So you got to make sure that is in the same resource group. And in our sense, we're kind of concerned about same network so that there's connectivity. All right, we're good there. And now below, we can select storage account name. We can type it in. We're just going to call it new storage. And it doesn't like the caps, so we're just going to use lower letters. New storage is already taken. We're going to call it new storage 1. All right, we're going to name it something specific. I'm going to call it Azure Storage. Let's see if it likes that. Tutorial is already taken. All right. Well, let's just leave it at Azure Storage Toot. We're going to leave it at that. So, yeah, it's very picky, and which is pretty common, so that's good. So the next thing we're looking at is performance. It kind of depends on what you're looking at. If you want the standard performance, you can leave it at that. If you want the premium, you can certainly select that as well, depending on your business needs. But we're just going to keep it standard for the purpose of the tutorial, and that's going to be fine. And then we can click next here so you can see the networking. But if you just leave it at default, it should work fine. It says here public endpoint all networks. All networks meaning that all the network that you've created. You can leave it at that. And then if we click next advanced, you got different things that you can adjust. But as I've mentioned in my previous videos, I like to keep things simple so that way it's easier to follow. So we're just going to simply click review and create. All right, now it just says that deployment is complete. We can certainly click on go to resources and go to it right away. But what I want to do actually real quick is make sure that at least one of my virtual machines is turned on, so that way after we configure our file share, we can go inside of it and use PowerShell to add that access to the share that we create. So I'm going to click on the little hamburger icon. I'm going to go down to my virtual machines, and I'm going to make sure that at least one of them is running, and looks like my Windows Server 2019 is running, which is good. We're going to access that in a little bit here. All right, I'm going to go home here, and as you noticed in our home page, it gives you access to the most recent things that you've worked on. And here's our Azure Storage tutorial account. We're going to click on that. So from here, we're going to click on file shares. I'm going to make it simple. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm not going to talk about anything else that it isn't a topic of this video. If you have special requests, please let me know. So we're going to simply click on file shares because that's what we're creating. I'm going to click a little file share button here, and on the right hand side, it's going to ask us for a name. So we're going to type in file share drive. And then right below it, it's super simple. I really like this. It gives you the ability to add the quota. So the size of the file share. So we're just going to make it 10 gigabytes. All right, we're going to go down here. I'm going to click create. And something very cool happens once you create it. It's very simple. It just kind of allocates shared space. It's going to be super fast, and it's already done. So we're going to click on that and see what's inside of that. All right, so with our file share drive selected, what we're going to do here is add a directory. So that way there's something in there. We're going to call it user storage. Going to click OK. So it's going to create just a folder called user storage. So that way, once we go in there, we're going to be able to see it once we connect to it. Then we're going to click connect. And we're going to pick our J drive here so that way it comes up. Then we're going to click copy the clipboard. We're going to back to our Windows Server. We have PowerShell open, and we have File Explorer open. You can see that there's no shared drive named J inside of it. So we're going to paste our script in there, and this is going to add, once it connects to it, it's going to add our J drive into it. So just kind of bear with me here in a moment. The virtual machine is kind of running slow. I'm not sure what's going on, but it will add it there eventually. So once it's done, I will show you that it did it. All right, so you saw that it was waiting for response, waiting for connection, and then verified the credentials, and then you can see that it added that J file share drive into here, and then it came up in our File Explorer right here, and it says, you can see that it says here 10 gigabytes. And if we go inside of it, we should be able to see that directory that we created. And from here, we can literally just put anything we want that we can create. I don't know, let's create a document, test, doc. All right. And then once we get out of it, in order to do this administration of it, if we go inside of user directory, we can see that test document that it came up. So as one of the last things I kind of wanted to show you that is really cool about these storage accounts is that you can actually monitor them just like those virtual machines that I showed you before. So let's go back to it, and then if you scroll down, we selected our Azure Storage Toot here. If you scroll down, you can monitor the its usage. So you can, just like with the virtual machines, you can monitor different usage and access at specific times and periods. All right. So why am I teaching you this? Well, obviously, so you can learn how to use it and how to administer Azure storage accounts. But there's another reason for implementing this type of shared drive is that, you can simply take that script if you want people to connect to it, and you can create that script. You can pass it on to people manually, or you can create the script and set it up in Active Directory for a certain group of people that work. For example, let's say you're in a business environment. There are 5 different groups. So let's say there is collections department. Let's say there is accounting department. Let's say there is a I don't know, some kind of a tech department, and they all are going to be in different groups in Active Directory. Well, you can set up a script, what they call a post logon script, that will add these type of shared drives to them automatically upon login. So you can use this script, you can implement it within Active Directory to run it for that specific group or even specific user if you want. But let's stick to the group. So let's say you want all collections department to have access to the specific storage that you've just created. So the way you would add it into Active Directory, you would set up the script. It's very simple, and every time they log in, it's going to run that script and make sure that they have that drive added. I mean, you can specify it in different ways. You don't have to use this specific script, but this is an option, and it would just happen. They would get this storage attached. They don't have to worry about trying to add it, the network drive or the shared drive themselves. All right, guys, I hope you like this video. Again, if you want to check out my intro, I highly recommend that. Thank you so much for watching. Please take a moment to like, share, and leave any comments that you may have. Thank you for watching, and you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.